When we hear the word selfish, we instinctively pull away. We associate it with greed, arrogance, and neglect of others. But what if I told you that being selfish isn't about taking too much? It's about giving too little. Not because you don't have enough to offer, but because you're withholding something the world actually needs. Your purpose. The truth is, playing small, doubting your significance, and waiting for the right time to start living intentionally, it's selfish. Because when you choose to dim your light, you're not just affecting your own life, you're robbing the people around you of the impact you were designed to have. That's the paradox. Selfishness isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides behind hesitation, comfort zones, and fear. We've been sold this lie that fulfillment is a solo journey, that it's about achieving personal milestones, checking boxes, and chasing accolades. But fulfillment doesn't come from what you do for yourself. It comes from what you ignite in others. Simon Sinek teaches us that everything meaningful begins with why. And when you start asking that question, not just what you're doing or how you're doing it, but why, you begin to see that selfishness is about direction. It's about choosing whether your actions serve only you or whether they elevate those around you. Most people live reactively. They respond to life instead of designing it. They go through the motions, wake up, work, scroll, sleep, thinking they have time. But the next 50 years of your life won't be defined by what happens to you. They will be defined by what you decide to make happen. And that decision starts with a shift in mindset from self-preservation to purpose contribution. When you define your purpose, you're not just writing a mission statement. You're stepping into a bigger story, one that invites others in, one that leaves something behind. Because a selfish life doesn't echo, but a life lived on purpose creates ripples that touch people you'll never even meet. The irony is, people avoid discovering their why because they're afraid it will ask too much of them, that it'll demand sacrifice, risk, discomfort. But the real cost is in avoiding it. When you don't pursue the path that lights you up, you shrink. You start playing small, and that smallness spreads. It affects your energy, your decisions, your relationships. It affects the standards you set for yourself, and those around you notice, even if no one says it out loud. And eventually, the regret of not stepping up becomes heavier than the fear ever was. Purpose doesn't mean you need to change the entire world. It means you need to show up in the part of the world where you are, fully and unapologetically. That might mean leading your team with more heart, raising your kids with more intention. But you do have to stop saving your potential for someday. So yes, this message is bold, and it's meant to be, because time doesn't wait for us to become less afraid. It keeps moving, and every moment you spend waiting to feel ready is a moment you could have been living in alignment. This isn't about hustle culture. It's not about doing more faster. It's about doing what matters more consistently. It's about choosing courage, not convenience. And it's about waking up to the fact that your life is not yours alone. You were made to contribute, to lead, to love, to inspire, and you can't do any of those things while sitting on the sidelines waiting for certainty. That's why this isn't just about motivation. It's about movement. It's about breaking the loop of self-centered hesitation and stepping into a legacy of service. Because at the end of the day, the question isn't what if I fail? It's what if I don't even try? We often go through life thinking that what we do, our decisions, our thoughts, our actions are personal. We think they live and die with us, that they're limited to our own little sphere. But that's not how influence works. Influence is quiet, subtle, and far reaching. It ripples. And the impact of your life isn't measured by how loud you are or how many followers you have. It's measured by how many people are moved, shifted, or inspired because you chose to act in alignment with your values. The truth is, whether you realize it or not, your presence in this world is already shaping the people around you. Every moment you spend building yourself up or tearing yourself down is sending signals, and those signals multiply through the lives you touch. Think of it this way. When you choose courage over fear, someone else sees that and believes they can too. When you speak with integrity, even when it's uncomfortable, you silently give others permission to do the same. When you show up consistently, even on the days you don't feel like it, you remind someone that discipline matters more than mood. This is the ripple effect, and it's happening whether you're aware of it or not. You don't need a podium to lead. You don't need a book deal or a massive audience. Leadership begins in the micro moments. How you carry yourself when no one's watching. How you treat others when there's nothing to gain. How you respond to failure when quitting seems easier. Simon Sinek reminds us that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. That principle isn't limited to business, it applies to life. People are watching how you live your why, they're learning from it. They're either being elevated by your authenticity or diminished by your avoidance. And the most powerful part, you get to choose. Every day. You get to choose whether your life serves as a lighthouse or a closed door, whether it invites people to rise higher or confirms their doubts that purpose is just a myth. Your ripple effect isn't just about strangers or followers. It starts with your inner circle, your family, your friends, your colleagues. They're paying attention not to your intentions, but to your actions. And when you dare to show up differently, to interrupt patterns of negativity, to own your truth, to lead with purpose, you shift the energy in that room. You create space for others to do the same. That's legacy in real time. Not after you're gone, but while you're still here. When you realize that the way you live your life can become someone else's reason to try again, everything changes. Suddenly you're not just showing up for you, you're showing up for the future versions of the people around you. And here's where it gets deeper. The ripple effect can work both ways. If you choose to stay stuck, to remain passive, to ignore your potential, that too spreads. Your avoidance becomes someone else's excuse. Your inaction becomes a model for comfort over courage. That's why it's not just about personal growth, it's about collective impact. Growth isn't selfish. Withholding your growth is. Because every time you silence your voice, you might be silencing the very thing someone else needed to hear to break through. That's the weight of influence. And that's the responsibility of purpose-driven living. So ask yourself, what kind of ripple do I want to leave behind? Do I want to be remembered as someone who played it safe? Or someone who disrupted mediocrity by living on fire with conviction? Your actions matter more than you think. The words you speak, the energy you bring, the values you embody, they're writing a story that others are reading. And even if you never get to see the full reach of your impact, you can be sure that it's happening. Somewhere, someone is being shaped by your example. That's not pressure, it's a gift. Because in knowing your life matters, you're reminded that your choices matter too. There's a lie we've been sold. It's subtle, seductive, and deeply embedded in modern culture. The idea that life is about the pursuit of comfort, that we are here to accumulate, to arrive at a place where things finally feel easy. But here's the hard truth. Comfort is not the goal, purpose is, and purpose requires trade-offs. It demands a willingness to step into discomfort, not because we like pain, but because what's on the other side matters more than staying safe. This is the shift that the top 1% of fulfilled individuals make. They don't wake up asking what will feel good today. They wake up asking what will matter in 50 years. Simon Sinek has often spoken about the importance of starting with why. When you have a why that's bigger than you, something that stretches beyond personal achievement or short-term gratification, you stop making decisions based on fear. You start making them based on legacy. And that legacy isn't built in a moment of clarity or on a grand stage. It's built in the small decisions you make when no one's watching. It's built in how you speak to your children after a long day, and how you show up to work when motivation is low, and whether or not you answer the call to lead when it would be easier to remain in the background. You see, when you chase comfort, you inevitably become the center of your world. Everything is measured by how it affects you, your time, your energy, your mood. But when you live with purpose, your circle of concern expands. You begin to realize that your actions have consequences far beyond your own life. Choosing purpose over comfort doesn't mean abandoning self-care or joy. It means recognizing that the most meaningful life is one that gives, one that sacrifices momentary pleasure for long-term impact, one that doesn't settle for mediocrity just because it's easier. Living a life of purpose means doing the uncomfortable thing when it counts. It means speaking up when silence would be safer. It means pushing forward when quitting would be more convenient. It means learning when you'd rather avoid the hard truths. It's not always glamorous. It rarely gets applause in the moment, but it compounds. Over time, the people around you begin to shift, not because you told them what to do, but because they watched you choose something bigger than yourself. That's what real leadership looks like. This sermon isn't just about becoming more productive or achieving more success. It's about asking a deeper question. What are you doing with the time you've been given? Are you spending it preserving your comfort? Or are you investing it into a life that will outlast you? Because one day, someone will look back on how you lived and use it as the blueprint for how they live. The question is, what will that blueprint say? When you trade comfort for purpose, you begin to discover that your real strength was never found in things going your way. It's found in your ability to stay grounded when they don't. It's found in your ability to keep showing up for others, even when your tank feels low. It's found in your decision to contribute to the world, rather than constantly extract from it. That's not just success, that's significance. And significance never comes from taking the easy route. Simon reminds us that people will follow leaders who are clear about their why. But what we often forget is that we are all leaders in some capacity. You don't need a title to lead. You just need a life that points in a direction worth following. A life that says, I was here, not just to consume, but to contribute. I was here not just to be remembered, but to leave something that lasts. Purpose is what turns ordinary moments into moments that matter. The most powerful question you can ask yourself isn't, what do I want right now? It's, what am I building that will still matter when I'm gone? That's legacy. And legacy isn't about fame or fortune, it's about impact. It's about whether the way you lived, the way you led, the way you showed up, changed even one life for the better. But here's the part most people miss. Legacy isn't written at the end of your life. It's being written right now. With every decision, every word, every time you choose intention over impulse. In Simon Sinek's leadership philosophy, we often hear about playing the infinite game. That's what legacy is. It's an infinite mindset. It says, I may not be here forever, but what I do while I'm here can ripple beyond my lifetime. That shift in thinking transforms how you approach your career, your relationships, and your values. Suddenly, chasing short-term wins becomes less important than building long-term value. You stop asking, how fast can I get there? And start asking, how far can this reach after I'm gone? And this mindset isn't reserved for presidents, CEOs, or public figures. It applies to all of us. Legacy is a daily decision. It's in how you raise your kids. It's in how you treat strangers. It's in whether or not you speak up when it matters, even if it's inconvenient. When you understand that legacy is in your hands, you stop outsourcing meaning. You take ownership. You recognize that every moment is a brick in the foundation of something greater than you. But here's the challenge. Legacy building requires patience. In a world obsessed with overnight success, legacy asks you to plant seeds you may never personally harvest. It asks you to invest in others without guarantee of return. It asks you to create systems, businesses, communities, and ideas that might only reach their full potential after you're gone. That's hard, it's thankless at times, but it's the only kind of success that truly matters. We live in a culture that rewards visibility, but real legacy is often invisible until it's not. It's in the teacher whose students become leaders, the mentor whose advice echoes through generations, the entrepreneur who built a company that took care of its people long after they stepped down. It's not always flashy, it doesn't trend on social media, but it changes lives. Simon teaches us that leaders eat last, that the greatest among us are those who serve. Legacy is about service. It's about living in a way that lifts others, even when no one's watching. And the best part? You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be willing to keep showing up with intention. You just have to keep asking, what am I creating today that will still matter tomorrow? We get caught up in the illusion that legacy is this grand, distant concept. But it starts with how you treat the next 10 minutes. Will you react impulsively or respond with purpose? Will you seek comfort or growth? Will you act out of fear or out of vision? These aren't just moral choices, they're strategic ones. Because every leader who's ever left a meaningful legacy started by taking responsibility for their impact. You are already leaving a legacy. The only question is, what kind? Which story will your life tell 50 years from now? Will it be a story of distraction or of focus? Will it be a story of self-interest or of selflessness? Will it be a story of someone who waited for permission or someone who stepped up and took ownership of their influence, no matter how big or small? Simon reminds us that leadership isn't a rank or a role. It's a decision to live in a way that inspires others to grow. Legacy is that decision, played out day after day.